AITA for not telling my BF that my dad family is rich. So, my BF Callum and I have been together for 8 months, and over this long weekend I figured it would be a good time for him to meet my dad. He has met my mom and stepdad a couple of times, but always at restaurants or my place. But for this meeting with my dad, we went over to his place for lunch. Looking back on it, Callum was immediately uptight when he saw where my dad lives, but I thought it was just nerves. He was acting pretty strange all through lunch and was very cagey about any questions my dad or his wife asked. But again, I chalked it up nerves. Well, when we were driving back, he blew up, not yelling or anything, just clearly frustrated that I never told him my dad is rich. I was confused and asked why he'd need to know my dad's income. Callum said he would have prepared himself better if he'd known, and that I sent him in there blind. Because you're meant to warn your partner or potential pitfalls when they meet your parents. I was still confused what about my dad's tax bracket was a potential pitfall. I could see warning him if my dad was incredibly snobbish about dress sense or manners, but he isn't. Callum then asked if I'd also hidden that my mom and stepdad were rich, which I admitted I guess I did. Although I take issue with him calling it hiding something, it's just not relevant. Callum hasn't let it go and is now digging into irrelevant stuff such as my previous vacations, my living situation, and my job, apparently so he can figure out what exactly my lifestyle is. I think he's totally lost the plot. But up until now he's been a really sweet, unassuming, chill person, so I'm wondering if I really am the problem? To clarify, my parents are not rich like what you would think of when you think rich. Both my dad and stepdad have been successful and been able to give themselves and their kids nice lives, but we aren't the Waltons. And even if we were, is this a thing you warn people about? First comment, rich people are always out of touch and genuinely don't see their wealth for what it is. They just grew up a decent-sized house. They only had a few international vacations per year. Their family only had 4 cars. They only go out to eat 5 nights a week. I hate to agree that kind of naivety isn't inherently assholish, but IDK. I think the way the OP has framed this situation is she really wants to frame her boyfriend as a jealous asshole. Because all poor people are jealous of wealthy lifestyles and get really bitter about it. Shame them. But also my family isn't even that rich. The reality is learning your partner comes from an unimaginable background like that with no warning is threatening AF. It'd make me question everything. Our dates, present exchanges. And then in the long term, these sudden expectations of having to adjust your career goals to maintain their lifestyle. And what about marriage? What kind of brutal prenup are you in for? What happens if you don't get a prenup? The rich spouse's family can obviously afford the best lawyers to rake you over the coals. Second comment, oh me, that's the key. Callum might be feeling like he unlocked a pretty large part of your background that had been hidden on purpose, or not to him until then. Maybe he feels like now he's not in your league, or that he has to live up to a certain standard you're accustomed to. Maybe as a man, he pictures himself having to be the provider TM of your couple in a potential future, and having to maintain the lifestyle, to use his term, you're accustomed to. When I was in my 20s, I dated someone whose family was much richer than mine. It's intimidating for no other reason than society trains you to see wealth as inherently moral. Rich people are people who are better. It's scary when you're meeting the parents. You feel like it's going to be even harder to measure to the parents' expectations. It changes things for him, and I don't really blame him for that. It's an entire set of representations that he has to adapt to the new information. But I also think that it's a fairly young relationship, 8 months. And you didn't have to disclose anything. God knows opening with that sort of data point could attract the wrong people. Plus, as you noted in a comment, how do other people talk about their parents? Not usually by mentioning their income bracket. For sure, some things should have come up when you were talking about your childhood or your life with them. The kind of vacation you take, and the kind someone with parents on minimum wage take, are probably very different, for instance. So I'd guess that's why he's going through all of it again in his mind, reading that with this newfound information. Give him time. I think it's a rare not case here, and he needs time to process it. If his erratic behavior lasts, however, you become NTA. Third comment, NTA. I would say differently if your family were incredibly snobbish or something, but it sounds like they are perfectly fine people who just happen to have money. I've been in almost this exact same situation before. I come from an upper middle class background, and I was currently living in an area far away from family. So I had a friend's family that pretty much took me in for holidays and just random dinners and stuff. They were quite wealthy, but perfectly normal people. You wouldn't have known that they were wealthy if you didn't see their house or hear about the expensive vacations that they took, and they never judged anyone. A guy I dated for a while came from an extremely poor family, and he hadn't done much in his adult life to try to improve his situation. I didn't care. I liked him just the way he was at the time. But when I started bringing him around my friend's family, he was always uncomfortable. When we would leave, he would rant to me about how everyone always looks down on him, even though nothing would happen that indicated anyone was judging him. I came to realize that it was just his issue and insecurities that he was projecting onto them. Sounds like, most likely, this is just something your boyfriend needs to work through. Fourth comment, I say NTA in this specific situation, but you do seem to be lacking empathy for your BF. If you've ever seen a rom-com where there is one partner that is royalty wealthy and one is normal, you would understand how he could be feeling. Because you've never really thought about money, it isn't a big deal to you, but you should understand that not everyone has the same advantages as you do, and money is a touchy subject for lots and lots of people. I just went through something similar with my BF of just over a year. I work in finance and he understood that I made good money. What he didn't understand was that my own success is dwarfed by my family's financial situation. It came to a head over President's Day when I invited him to Bermuda for a late Valentine's Day trip. I made the plans and didn't think anything of booking a couple of last-minute business class tickets and a suite at the St. Regis for the weekend. We had traveled together before, but it was always planned well in advance, and the only international trip was a short cruise to the Caribbean. It was supposed to be a romantic, splurge weekend, but this is also how I would normally travel. When we got to the lounge at JFK, he made a joke about how he felt like he was in Crazy Rich Asians, knowing it is one of my favorite movies. I'm Asian. He thought he was being funny, but it did prompt a pretty deep conversation about my family that ended with him being pretty freaked out about the differences in our financial situations. He is mostly worried about, one, not fitting in with my family. He had met my sister, but not the rest of my family. Two, that he would be able to keep up with the lifestyle I live, and three, what I could possibly see in him, what he could possibly feel. I've spent the last month talking to him about it, letting him feel his feelings, but trying to reassure him that it doesn't matter to me, that he is a normal person, and that I like him just the way he is. He definitely isn't over it, but I did persuade him to come on a 2-week vacation to Europe for my birthday last week this week, so baby steps.